Hey guys, this is Isa, and I'm gonna narrate a battle that I played versus King Gorgie, King Floppy, whatever you may call him. It's the person that I'm facing. And this game was played only yesterday, actually, as I'm recording this. It was the semifinals of Pokémon Online Championship. Did I get that right? Yeah, Pokémon Online Champions League. That's it, sorry. This was the first game of the week between our two teams. And let's have a look at the team that I'm bringing in. I'm using Starmie, Chansey, Exeggutor, Tauros, Snorlax, and Golem. And all we know about Gorgie's team is that he's using a Jinx lead. Gorgie and I were both known for not bringing rap to our battles, so I expected him to not do that when I decided my team. What else can I say? Gorgie has used quirky mons in the past, and I expected a slightly quirky build from him this game as well. So there we have turn 1. Thunderwave and the Lovely Kiss is traded. Starmie going up against Jinx is a very poor matchup for Starmie, and I had Thunderwave outside of Blizzard and Psychic, so I couldn't do any significant damage. I switch into Chansey, the safe play, as Gorgie goes into his Snorlax here. And at this point, I should mention that my Chansey set is Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, and Counter. So this looks a bit poor for me, but to be honest, it's not that bad. However, many top-level players go for a first-turn Earthquake to scout specifically for Counter, because Counter is a very dangerous move if you get to use it correctly. I predict that Gorgie will go for the scouting and bring in my Exeggutor for very little damage, and now I threaten to use Sleep Powder. And Gorgie can block my sleep with Paralyzed Jinx, and I am fully aware of that, but I still decided to go for a Sleep Powder because I wanted to see his, partly because I wanted to see his switching pattern, but mostly because it was the safest play. I could have gone for a double switch into my Snorlax, for example, but I decided that going for the Sleep Powder was the safest play. Jinx goes for Blizzard and connects with Chansey. I use Thunderbolt. Blizzard gets a critical hit, but not a freeze. But I'm down to 45%, so I'm gonna have to heal up. Another critical hit Blizzard, and I'm at just above 50, so I'm gonna heal up, and Jinx is now paralyzed. I get to do a Thunderbolt onto the Snorlax. He comes in, and bam! Gorgie reveals that he still uses Earthquake, and I try to catch him with a counter. That does not work. So now I'm in a tight spot. I revealed my surprise. Gorgie did not fall for my trap. So the question from here is, how do I proceed? And at this point I decided to go for counter once more, because I had a feeling that he would use Body Slam as I would heal, or maybe switch out. But if we just skip forward a bit, and we can see that he's using Earthquake once more. And I have to heal up. I'm at roughly a third of my life. So I use Soft Boiled, and Gorgie shows the Body Slams. None of them paralyze. And if it would have paralyzed, that could have been beneficial for me, because that would mean essentially risk-free switches on when Jinx is in. I go into my Executor on an Earthquake, so despite switching in twice on the Snorlax, I am still quite healthy with my Executor. So I take 46 HP. I threaten sleep once more. I go for Psychic instead. It was the compromise play. In hindsight, I should have gone for a double switch into my Snorlax, because Jinx at anything that's not max HP is guaranteed one-hit KO'd by Hyper Beam. So that was... I think that was a misplay. I mean, chip damage is always nice and all, and I did get a Specs drop, so that's very helpful. But I think I could have afforded to be a bit more brave. And curiously enough, Jinx switches out into Lapras as I double into my Snorlax. And since my Chansey does not have Thunder Wave, I am very thankful for the paralysis that I got from my Body Slam. It's very relevant, incredibly relevant, because now my Chansey has... well, it doesn't suffer from its lack of Thunder Wave in that particular matchup anymore. So it's very safe to come in with Chansey now, assuming I don't get frozen, of course, and use Thunderbolt as I please. And I come in on a full paralysis. That's obviously helpful. Gonna take the moment to heal up here. Cased Victory giving us some baseball information. I think there's someone in the audience that's grateful for that. Snorlax comes in on the soft boiled. He knows I have a counter, so we could chip away at each other's health, but the risk is quite high for me, because if I mispredict, if I use Ice Beam and he uses Body Slam and gets a paralysis, he can finish me off with a Hyper Beam. And if I use counter and he uses Earthquake, well, I've taken a third of my max HP for basically nothing. And with the element of surprise gone, I decide that this is not a matchup that I want to play. So I switch out into Executor, and for the third time it comes in on a Snorlax Earthquake. Keeps taking very little damage. And here I still threaten sleep. So Snorlax essentially has to switch out. And I don't make the double switch into Snorlax this time either, and I'm not content with that. Inside, I really should have done that. I believe that I played too conservative with my Executor. It was... by this point, it was a bit obvious that there would be no risk-taking from Gorgie's side. So, yeah. We can do a bit of analysis of what Gorgie has showed so far. He has shown a standard Snorlax, a Jinx, and a Lapras, so some decent ice spam going on there. He's likely to have a Tauros, he's likely to have an Executor hitting in the ranks, but I don't think... I didn't think that he would use Chansey. I did, but maybe I shouldn't have used it, as my Chansey now get frozen. Either way, the reason that I wasn't as confident in the opposing Chansey was because I've played Gorgie previously, and from my memories, he doesn't like to use Chansey a lot. Either way, I think it's a misplay of me to not sacrifice my Chansey immediately. But instead I go into my Snorlax and look at that message. Freeze Claws prevented the freezing effect of the move from working. So without Freeze Claws I would be down by so much that it'd be, yeah, essentially hopeless to come back from that position. It's not like that though, because we do have freeze claws here, and something has to take a body slam here. Jinx is KO'd by a body slam, and I think that I'm not sure what Floppy expected me to do. Maybe he expected amnesia or rest. I'm not confident, but what he ended up doing was switching into his paralyzed Lapras. I get a high roll on my body slam, which is very thankful. I'm very thankful for that, I should say. Lapras at 43%. It's not a guaranteed KO with a Hyper Beam, but it's a solid chance. And given that my Starmie is freezing and my Chansey is frozen, I believe that this was a prime opportunity to save the Lapras and instead sacrifice the Jinx. The Jinx is at 39%. It can't survive any of my Pokemon except Exeggutor, and if it comes in on Exeggutor, it has to dodge critical hits, it has to dodge a Specs drop, and it has to dodge a full paralysis. I am fairly sure that's not even a 50% chance. Instead, I reveal the Hyper Beam. I think that Floppy could have foresaw my Hyper Beam, and yeah, that's a Lapras dead instead of a Jinx. I think that was a misplay. I should also mention that looking at Gorgie's team, I thought it was quite unlikely that he would have a rock or a ghost hidden. And I think that this Alakazam reveal essentially confirms this suspicion of mine. Because this Alakazam reveal sticks true to my belief that Floppy would not bring a Chansey. It reveals that I think that he still has a Tauros at this point. There's no reason not to. And I believe that Gorgie isn't one of those gimmick types that aren't using Exeggutor on their team. Because using Jinx as your lead and then having no backup sleepers, I'm assuming that the Lapras wasn't Sing. That's not very healthy. I don't agree with that. That means that you're incredibly weak to opposing Gengars. Starmie comes in on the Psychic. Psychic was obviously the play. That does KO at 31% HP Snorlax. I think it's guaranteed. And Gorgie reveals Seismic Toss. I think that's interesting. I think that Seismic Toss is inferior to Reflect on non-lead sets. Rarely do you want, or rather need, the extra damage that you gain from Seismic Toss. And that extra damage is only onto opposing Psychic types. And at some times it doesn't even matter, because as you can see here, when Psychic was used turn 1 and turn 26, whatever, you get the message. Starmie came in on a Psychic, and a Specs drop happened at once. So Psychic from this point onward would do just about as much damage as the Seismic Toss would do, just slightly less. And I think that there's not enough to gain from using Seismic Toss on a non-lead set, because if you're a lead Alakazam, Reflect won't be very useful, because you intend to either spread paralysis or get as much damage as possible before getting slept. However, the non-lead Alakazam is very unlikely to be slept. In this case, yeah, it's not slept. So Reflect won't be here, and thus this Alakazam will be very frail. I shouldn't get too far behind though. I get to wake up with my Starmie, which is very thankful. I am now at a essentially 5-5 situation since my Chansey is frozen, And looking at my team, I could bring in Executor on the Psychic. But if I want to use Sleep Powder, I have to make sure that I'm not missing. Because otherwise I won't get too many shots at sleeping. Tauros won't like to come in. Golem can come in on a Seismic Toss, but I won't KO his Alakazam without booming, so that's not cutting it, I believe. Snorlax, yeah, that's not either the way to go. So at this point I'm waiting for Alakazam to KO my Starmie, and once that happens, it was my intention to bring in the Executor. And after that point I think that I'd use Psychic, because even if he switches out into his Jinx, Psychic would have a better than 50% chance of two-hit KOing Jinx, or at least KOing Jinx without taking any damage. But Floppy decides that he does not want to finish my Chansey off with Tauros, and that's a bit interesting. I'm not sure if I agree. I could still bring in my Executor after this and threaten a Sleep Powder. The difference would be that I would take more damage if Tauros decided to stay in. But it would also mean that if I were to mispredict and use Psychic onto Tauros, I would deal a lot more damage than I would with Psychic against Seismic Toss. But Chansey's dead, and this gives me some time to think. Looking at Floppy's team, I expect the last Pokemon to be an Executor here. We have Paralyzed Jinx, 39%, Snorlax, 81%. That can take a Psychic or a Tauros. I have two options here, basically. I can bring in, maybe three. I can bring in Executor, Tauros, maybe Starmie if I want to sacrifice it and spread a para before going down. However, I rule out the Starmie idea because I want to kill the Jinx and then sleep something somehow with Executor. So paralyzing Tauros would not be beneficial to that cause. In the end, I decided for Tauros. I'm putting a lot at a 50-50 here, because Tauros versus Tauros, that's obviously going to be a 50-50 in terms of who wins and who loses. But in my mind, this was the best way to make sure that Floppy did not switch out. And if I get two Body Slams in, even if I lose, my Executor Psychic will KO the opposing Tauros, which would make it decently risk-free. And Floppy decides to switch out into his Executor here, and I now have to make a choice. If I want something to be slept here, what Pokemon do I want to be slept? And if that Pokemon is Starmie or Snorlax or Golem, can I switch those in safely without risking a Psychic or Mega Drain KO? And the alternative was staying in with Tauros. I don't see switching into Executor here as a good idea. If I stay in with Tauros and go for Body Slam or Blizzard, I can hope for a secondary effect, which would cripple the Executor decently. But I can also hope for a miss from Sleep Powder. I can also hope that he mispredicts and tries to go for Psychic or such. And Body Slam plus Hyper Beam is absolutely a KO. Blizzard plus Blizzard, not a KO, so there's no real point in going Blizzard here, I believe, since that would only increase the chance of missing. I go for Body Slam and Sleep Powder misses, and that's a huge deal, because now Executor is at Hyper Beam percentage. Jinx can't switch in, obviously. Tauros does not want to switch in on a Hyper Beam. So Alakazam barely survives, barely. Hyper Beam versus Alakazam deals 97% max, but obviously a critical hit would be fatal. Snorlax can come in here. It dies to critical hit, but if I don't crit the Hyper Beam, then all is well for him, as he can counter me by blowing up, which would either KO or my Tauros or leave it with tops 12% HP. And I believe that's the play here. Even if I go for Body Slam would leave his Alakazam with over 50% HP, meaning that I couldn't KO it with my Hyper Beam. If I got a critical hit Body Slam, that would be a different thing, but you know, that's not that requires me to both get a critical hit and also to use Body Slam versus a 39% Exeggutor. He could very well end up sacrificing his Exeggutor here. He does not know that I carry a Golem. He might have a suspicion that I do, but he doesn't know, and Golem is not one of those must-have Pokemon, as I believe Exeggutor to be. So it could very well be so that he believes that saving a particular Pokemon is the best play to do. Exeggutor in general is good versus if it has well, Psychic would KO Snorlax most likely, not guaranteed. Versus Exeggutor, it gets an opportunity to blow up. Versus Golem, it can Mega Drain or Psychic. And versus Starmie, Psychic has a decent chance to KO. If it has Mega Drain, that's great as well. So essentially, this Exeggutor is still a threat, and that I believe that is what Floppy thought as well, and that's why he decided to sacrifice his Jinx. However, I believe that keeping Jinx and going directly into Snorlax rather than sacrificing Snorlax and then going pardon me. I believe that going into Snorlax directly was the best play, especially if I were to use Hyper Beam, which I also was, because that would mean that he would get a free explosion on me. I reveal my Golem, I come in on a Body Slam, and I am very thankful that it doesn't get a paralysis. This Snorlax has only revealed Body Slam and Earthquake. It could be, even though slightly unlikely, it could be a Surf variant. And at this point, I am very scared of the Exeggutor hitting in the ranks. 39%, that's enough for a Body Slam plus Rock Slide to KO, but it's not enough for a Rock Slide on its own. So I decided to keep momentum going for me by blowing up immediately. And blowing up at that point, I believe that's very fine. Snorlax has 11% HP. It was a huge threat when it was sitting at 80%. Now I can come back in with my Tauros and finish this Snorlax off. And this also puts Floppy in a bind, because right now he's running short of options. He can bring in his Alakazam, but Alakazam loses to Tauros in the straight 1 versus 1. And I could also chicken out and go immediately into my Exeggutor. If I were to do that, I would be in a great position, as I could go for Sleep Powder and or Boom, which would leave us with a Tauros Ditto, and he has Exeggutor, I have Starmie. Since my Starmie can paralyze his Tauros and go for Blizzard versus his Exeggutor, that would not be ideal. Instead, Floppy brings in the Tauros, and we're entering the 50-50 that is the Bull Ditto. And at this point, if I get paralysis, I'm quite content with that. If I win the Tauros Ditto with while being paralyzed, that's very much okay still. I can maybe sacrifice my Tauros and then head into my Exeggutor to sleep the opposing Alakazam most likely. Instead, but we have this happening. I get a critical hit Body Slam and no side effects. Floppy gets a regular Body Slam, no side effect. And if I win the speed tie here and kill him with a hyper beam, I'm in a great position, and that did indeed happen. And you can see in the chat, Floppy isn't very happy with that. Now I'm in a 4-2 lead. That's very helpful, of course. Alakazam cannot one-hit KO me. I cannot one-hit KO him either. But in order to win here, Floppy has to rely on some serious hacks, essentially. For starters, he has to get a critical hit Psychic versus my Tauros if I stay in with Tauros, and if I decide to switch out, which I do, then he must double into his Exeggutor and get a faster sleep going, and after that he has to switch out into his Alakazam and get critical hits. So it's a difficult road ahead of him, to say the least. And when this fails, Psychic comes out, but I send in my Exeggutor, and I can threaten a sleep. I have 201 HP at this point, so I live 2 Seismic Tosses, and unless he uses Psychic again and gets a critical hit, I live 2 attacks as well. So going for Sleep Powder here is very safe. If Alakazam stays in, he has to hope for a miss from Sleep Powder, and since he does not carry Reflect, my Boom is a guaranteed KO onto the Alakazam, so I can always pull the trigger on that and hope for the best. Seismic Toss connects, so does Sleep Powder. And now I'm at a win-win position. I can blow up with Exeggutor here, and if Alakazam stays in, it dies. And then he has an Exeggutor remaining versus my Tauros that outspeeds and one-hit KOs. I also have Blizzard from Starmie, so I have basically more than a 99% chance of winning from this point. And Hyper Beam KOs, securing the kill. This was a very fun game to play. I was very nervous prior to playing this, and initially I got outplayed with the forced reveal of counter, and then I compensated for that by making some plays by switching in Exeggutor onto Earthquake 3 times in a row, but I failed to capitalize. And when my chance got frozen, I was really in a tight spot, but I believe that I got an even position after Floppy decided to sacrifice his Lapras instead of his Jinx. And when my Starmie woke up, that I believe that made the playing field even. And when Sleep Powder missed, I believe I was in the lead. And after that point, I never let go of it. The Tauros winning the Ditto quite decisively was obviously very helpful for me. But that's part of the game, as we all know. I think this was a very fun game, as said. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I know that others did. So yeah, thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Isa, signing out.